coming. Thank you for the introduction. It was better than the actual presentation, I think. Concise, clear, and making the point. Epistema, just for the non-Greek speakers in the audience, is just reliable knowledge in Greek, and epistemology is the theory of knowledge that started in ancient Greek with Plato and others. So we decided to call our company this. Apart from working for the Israeli government, I studied physics and philosophy of science, so epistemology was part of it. And what we're trying to be interested in is the difficult questions that people in the business world, in government, and in academia are dealing with. So questions such as, what will be oil prices in a year from now? Questions as, will Trump be re-elected in 2020? And questions like that. And in that case, our belief is that human understanding is based on questions such as why. So we understand through arguments and counter-arguments. And the tools that you have today in chat rooms or in forums or in emails are very bad in allowing computers to follow a discussion, a rational discussion. Therefore, if you want to save truth, and I hope some people in the audience do want to save truth in this era, therefore you need to apply a different product. So I'll speak a little bit about philosophy 101, because I think it's interesting when you look through philosophy on current technological problems, you gain a much more fundamental understanding of where we stand in the relationship specifically between the hype of AI and crowdsourcing or expert sourcing. And then I'll let you ask some questions, and if we have time, I'll show you the product, because it all boils down to a real product. We're a startup company building a product, not a service. We're proud to have Slack as our investors and Peter Thiel. So there is a real product behind it that can be used. If I won't have time to show the product, feel free to come and approach me later on or tomorrow. I'll show you the product on my own laptop. Okay, so philosophy, I hope this is what you came for. As I said, we want to have reliable decision-making and allow as many people to participate. As you know, this is the main problem in any business or any discussion of political issues. Usually, let's say in business, you would want to hear all of your 300 employees because you realize, oh, that's too much. Is that for the video? Yes. Because I think they can hear me. Okay. So you would have liked to have all of your employees in the room to discuss with them, but that would become endless. You would want to send an email to all 600 people on your list to hear what they have to say, but then you get a thread of 5,000 emails. You have to read them all. It doesn't make sense, so people make the room smaller. They get 10 people that don't represent all of the views. We've seen them in the government a lot. I don't know if any of you knows the book, The Silo Effect. A very clear one, like when you get a small group of people, you miss a lot, and most of the failures are not because the experts on the Syrian regime are not good experts about Syria. It's that the Syrian regime is being survived by the help of the Russians, and you didn't get the Russian experts into the room. So you missed the whole explanation. And yeah, bringing truth back, I think, is a right cause to work on and spend money on. So two guys here doing epistemology. Plato is the top one, and Immanuel Kant, our friend from Germany. When I studied in Cambridge, and sorry for the joke, they never said Kant, they said Kant. But Germany is Germany, and he's Immanuel Kant. Since the beginning of epistemology, people said there are 4 ways in which we get to know things about the world as humans. First of which is perception, our ability to look at the world and gather data. The second one is reasoning, our logical abilities to deduce things from what we've seen or to generalize things into laws of nature. And our memory. If we don't have a memory, we cannot carry our knowledge from time to time, and we lose everything, right? We cannot build our knowledge. And then there is something called testimony, which is the exchange of knowledge. Like if you learn something, you want to teach me, I don't have to go and do the exact experimentation in your lab. I can just count on your knowledge and acquire the knowledge myself. Now, the first 3 ones, by the way, there's a 5th one that Enlightenment killed, and this was called revelation, right? religious people believe there's another source of knowledge which is divine, and the secular world, the scientific world, kill it completely, at least in philosophy, not in theology. Testimony is a communal one and not individual. And the question goes like, what starts what inspires what, and how does it go that we acquire knowledge as humans? And then we will, of course, ask about computers too. The main claim of Immanuel Kant was that the individual capabilities, they are principled and they are generative. So if you want to learn something new, you have to look at the world and understand things with your own mind. This is enlightenment, right? Protestants, we can read the Bible and understand it ourselves. We don't need priests or others to tell us what to do. And the testimony was always looked at as very secondary. So I acquired knowledge, now I can tell you about that. But there's nothing new that is being created. I'm just transferring existing something over to you. Much like a barter or exchange of money. I have money, I give it to you. Unlike money, I can give you knowledge and still possess it myself. Now modern 21st century buzzwords. Perception is what we call today big data, right? So in the beginning of the scientific revolution, we created all these labs because we couldn't travel to the ocean and study the ocean. So we bring a little paddle into our lab, and once in 3 years, we go to the ocean with a big expedition, and we find like whether we can calibrate our lab little paddle into the ocean. But today we have so much sensors, they're so cheap, you can just throw sensors into the ocean, they can transmit to a satellite, and you get all the data live on the cloud. If you go into NASA and you want to be an astronomer these days, you get all the raw data from all telescopes in one place. All you need to do is find general relativity, right? That's the only thing that you have to do. Experimental physics is very difficult, but the data comes to us and we can have as much as we want. Crowdsourcing is actually, again, the secondary stepson of knowledge. So the fact that testimony was looked at for very many years as secondary maybe can explain also why people are so excited about data, but some of us are also excited about crowdsourcing, but the hype is not as big. Like we can do Google Trends and see whether AI catches more than crowdsourcing. I assume it does. So that's one explanation, and now I want to tell you that actually, if we look at I'm trying to make it shorter. If we look at science and the scientific revolution, as I said, it was all about making perception the main thing. So you go to the lab, first of all. This is like the story of science, if you try to think what they taught you in high school. Newton gets an apple on his head, that's perception. Then he goes somewhere in Cambridge in his room and thinks about it, and then he comes up with gravitation. He writes it down, all the equations and the correlations, and then maybe at the end of it, he tells it to other people and do the peer review. And if you think of the scientific process, like simplified, very simplified, people think that there is an individual genius. The two pictures represent them. And Einstein was like doing everything himself, and then he told the world and got a Nobel Prize, and then many other people started working on general relativity or special relativity. The truth of the matter is that it never happened like that. So, for example, special relativity by Einstein, if you go and study the history of physics, you'll never find a picture of Einstein in a lab. He never done that. The collection of the data that Einstein used for special relativity was collected by other people that no one knows the names of. Michelson-Morley, by the way. The equations of special relativity were not written by Einstein, they were written by a guy called Lorentz. So till today we call them Lorentz equations. So in the terminology of big data, the correlations were not found by Einstein. He didn't do the machine learning to find the anomalies because mathematical equations are just about that. You take the data and you find the correlation and you write the mathematical equations. The only thing Einstein did is to tell a story, a very human thing to do, right? So he took seriously the equations, which Lorentz didn't, and he said, like, if you look at the equation seriously and you take a twin, brother and send him to space and back, he will come back older than his brother. And this is what the new theory tells us. And this is why he got all his glory, right? Because he took it seriously. The same can be told about Galileo Galilei in a different way. Now, if you look today at physics, or in the last 20 years, people were studying what people are doing in CERN, for example. And you see articles that are actually co-authored by hundreds of people. And you can ask yourself, who's the exact scientist that knows this article? And the simple answer, for lack of time, is no one. It's just the group of physicists that share the knowledge. None of them individually know anything. So therefore, people are now speaking about communal epistemology. So they're saying there's much more in life to testimony, in the code of what Immanuel Kant called it, than actual perception of the individuals. If I ask you, any of you, like how much of what you think you know about the world you acquired yourself via your own perception, I think, at least for myself, the answer is like maybe 10%, right? We learn from our parents, then we learn from our teachers, from our friends, then from reading books, then from reading articles, then from coming to conferences. There's very little that we do ourselves. So now there comes a new generation of people looking into the mathematics and the philosophy of acquiring knowledge in a group. So one of them is Martin Kusch, the upper book, Knowledge by Agreement. And then there is Keith Lehrer is doing actually the mathematics of how knowledge is being transferred among a lot of people. It's kind of a network mathematics, naturally. So at some point, it starts looking like either Bayesian networks, if you look at the probabilities of how the truth is propagating, and at some even more advanced point, it starts looking like neural networks. Okay. So what we are trying to do in our product is to actually use graph algorithms and machine learning algorithms to follow discussions and debates between communities of experts, initially in a business context, because otherwise you cannot raise money from VCs, and we wanted to raise money from VCs. But the machine is a logical machine. It's a very simple one. It looks very much like Quora or like Facebook, but now a few words of technical issues. Part of the reason you get to post-truth and fake news is like if you see a political debate, if there is a debate, on Facebook, you realize that you're putting comments on comments on comments. It's a linear stretch of discussion. And since natural language processing is very bad at extracting whether you agree with me or disagree with me and what's exactly your reasoning, you get 1 to the power of n. So you get 0 semantic advancement for the algorithms of Facebook to be able to judge the discussion and say who's agreeing with whom, what is the line of argumentation, whether it's getting better or worse. So what we've done is done a similar UI, a similar front-end software that is actually structuring the discussion. So people can put in claims. They can participate. They go into what we call a knowledge base. Technically, it's a graph database. And then we put it out automatically. Everything is automatic. There is no human intervention. We put it out for a peer review, so you can bring in as many people as you want that can say either I agree with you or disagree with you, and why. And then we allow them to upload data as files and attachments. But in our system, because everything is structured, the computer can actually follow the fact that you brought up this data set in the context of this question, in the context of this hypothesis, in the context of agreeing with this hypothesis. So our ability to suggest this data set in later stage is much more advanced than Slack's, because Slack or Gmail just know that Joab uploaded a file. That's all they know about the data set. So I let you ask the few questions, and I lost my time. So anyone who wants to see the product itself and how it looks like can come later on, and I'll show you it live. It looks something like that, but I won't steal more time. So thank you very much.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah.
During the peer review process, when the people who agree or disagree upload their data, is there another layer that filters the data to see whether it's credible?
Yeah, so actually we've done two implementations. One is now in terms of our business. What I'll show you if you'll approach me later is a SaaS platform. So we don't want on the SaaS platform to do integrations into your own data sets. In the on-prem installation, we do that more. But the interesting, and this is like a real finding that I was really surprised to see, like what we actually do, again, in a bit of a technical terms, our machine learning algorithms are following patterns of agreements and disagreements amongst the people participating, and we divide it by your history. Are you a contrarian usually? Are you a fast thinker, slow thinker? Whether your department is always agreeing with each other, so you have groupthink, so we lower your score, and so on and so forth. So the really surprising thing is that when someone uploads a data set, if you follow not the content of the data set, but the reaction of the experts to the data set, like many people disagree with it, or people from different departments independently disagree with it, you get to kind of a very nice probability to say what's the value of this data in the context of this discussion. Yeah.
Can you be undecided?
Like,
I don't know. I don't want to agree or understand.
Yeah. So again, originally we allowed you to choose out of 7 levels of certainty and uncertainty, like likely, unlikely. If you know the US intelligence have this kind of measure of your, and we actually, behind the scene, our backend is actually calculating probabilities, based on probabilities on the net. But we found that, again, from a business point of view, because we want to be a profitable business, people are really taken aback when you tell them your claim is 35% reliable. They're really frightened. So we hide it now. So we give you like 1 or 2 or 3 stars to say what a good knower are you and on which kind of discussions. And actually behind the scenes, I don't know, again, if people know what Bridgewater of Ray Dalio are doing, the hedge fund, we build a matrix of your cognitive abilities. Okay, so as I said, I can see that you're contrarian. I can see different cultural behaviors. So Israelis, we like to argue a lot. So you see that dozens of % of people are always disagreeing with each other. It's kind of a cultural thing. In other cultures, we've seen people usually agree with the boss, so they don't want to really confront the bosses. So you can calibrate even for cultural effects.